Okay, hi. I think we are recording. Um, if you have not watched the first video I posted about American values, the 5 minute plus by Pruger University, please do so now. Stop this, watch that first, then watch this video. Okay. Now that you have watched the first video, he mentions three key traditional American values. These are values that he feels America was founded on. I agree. From the beginning until very recently, these have always been guiding principal main values of America. They are changing. So the first point you should think about. Values do not stay the same in a society. They change over time. They change with new generations. They change as the world changes. Okay. Now, I agree with him about those three values. I want to mention about the God-given rights. I think this is important. It's not necessarily God given rights, it's natural given rights. So we do not believe that the government gives us our rights. In other words, we are born with these rights. All men should have these rights as human beings. We should be able to live freely without being harassed by the government. We should be able to pursue or try to have a happy life and do whatever job we want and live how we want to live. So these are rights that are given to us. Now, it's the government that actually takes away these rights. If you look at the history of America and the founding of America after the Revolution in the 1780s, when America got its independence and we created our Constitution, there are many things listed that the government cannot do, because this is the idea, is that you have these rights and the government cannot take them away from you. So this is rather unique in world history, actually. So I think that's still true today. I think almost all Americans, young and old, believe in the rights that are found in our Constitution. Some of these rights are the right to protest against our leaders, the right to vote against them, to choose somebody else if they don't do a good job, the right to make fun of our leaders. We can say whatever we want about them in the newspaper, online, in social media, and nothing bad can happen to us. Now, I don't know what happens in Vietnam if you say bad things about the government, but probably not a good idea. In some countries, most countries of the world, it's not really a good idea. But yeah, in places like England and America, it's usually fine. Okay, you have the right to assemble. You have the right to protest. You have the right to meet with other people to talk about how bad your government is. Okay, what else? The right to self-protection, and that is the Second Amendment, as that is the controversial one about gun ownership. Americans have always had guns in the country, in the rural areas especially, even today, for hunting, but also for self-protection. If I want to protect my home against people, robbers, I can have a gun. And also, the gun is to protect us against our own government. Now, that's the part they don't always tell you, but based on the history of America and how the British troops treated the Americans, they always feel that guns are important. So Americans love guns. I think that's a traditional American value. Not all. A lot of Americans hate guns, especially in the city, who live in the cities. Okay. Also, the police cannot just come into your home. They cannot search your, trunk of your car. They cannot search your home. They cannot do things like that without your permission, unless they have a reason, and they have to give it to a judge. It's a different, not the police, somebody else who looks at it, the evidence, and says, oh yes, that something is happening there. We should allow them to search. Otherwise, they can't. So all of these things I think are important American values, is that we feel we have a right to privacy. And that includes not being spied on by our own government, even though our government recently admitted that they have been doing this after 9/11. So this is something that really makes a lot of Americans like me, my age and older, really angry. Like, who do they think they are? If we have not done anything, we don't want the police watching us. We don't want the government watching us. I know in some societies it's normal. I mean, in China, they watch their citizens and spy on them all the time, every day. But yeah, that does not make Americans happy when they find out about this. They don't like it. They don't want it. It's not right. Okay, so that's an American value. What else? He mentioned being judged by that all Americans are Americans, no matter their ethnic background. That is important. And a lot of, I think, immigrants today who legally immigrate to America, it's a long process. It's difficult. When they become citizens, they're very proud of it. And I think they really appreciate, it doesn't matter if they are Vietnamese American, Chinese American, Swedish American, Mexican American. They are American as far as everyone is concerned. We think of them as American. They have all the same rights we do. Okay? We'll treat them the same, or they should be treated the same. They aren't always. So and historically, this is something that you also need to think about. There are ideal values. These are the values that you have in your Constitution, in your law. These are values that people write about. These are what maybe most people believe. But then you also have, how are the values actually applied in the real world? So, for example, there are a lot of different minorities in the U.S. that suffered, Black Americans, not just with slavery, but after they were free and they actually were considered Americans in many parts of the southern U.S., there were laws that didn't allow them to be Americans. And they were against our Constitution. They were wrong. But they were there. And so you always have to think of those two things. There are values that people believe in, that are ideal. And then there are values that, how are they actually practiced in the real world? Okay. What else? Honesty. Oh, hard work and honesty. So let's talk about hard work first. I think Americans, until recently, have always been one of the hardest working groups of people in the world overall. And I know that might sound crazy to you, but let me just give you a few examples. So, for example, I started working when I was 16 in high school, had a job the last 2 years of high school. I worked the entire time. I went to university to help pay for university costs. My dad worked out in the melon fields, in the farm. A lot of rural areas in the U.S. today, in the country, still, people work on farms and stuff. In the cities, no. And a lot of young people today, I don't think, have that value. I think this is a changing value. I don't think most Americans these days are hardworking. Or most still are, but many Americans are not. They're lazy, especially, I think, younger people. They expect to get money for not much work. They expect life to be easy. That was not the expectation, my generation. I don't think I finally, when I was 33 years old, I finally had a first time in my life I didn't work since age 16. And I took some time off and traveled around Asia, but I had some money saved to do it. And then when I ran out of money, I got another job. So I have done some really terrible jobs temporarily, just for a few weeks or a month or 2 months to make money when I was unemployed. I've never taken money for being unemployed. I don't know. A lot of people, like I said, I think this is a changing value. And so, unfortunately, but certainly my parents' generation, the hardest working, and my generation too, I don't think I ever had vacation time. I mean, I did not have a job until, well, I don't know. That I ever was given vacation time. Americans don't have a lot of vacation compared to like Europeans and stuff. A lot of Americans work all year. They might, if they work for a really good company, they might get 2 weeks of vacation. People in the military get a little bit more. People in government, work for the government, get more. But people who work for private companies or own their own businesses or anything, you know, they just don't get vacation, and they work holidays a lot, things like that. And this is why I say that. And they can't just quit. If a family members die, they get a few days off, and then they got to go back to work. So hard work was a traditional American value. Honesty is another one. Americans do not like liars, cheaters, or scammers. Let me give you an example. And until age 18, I don't think I had ever been treated dishonestly by someone. If an American who has not lived overseas or in a really big city, sometimes when they travel to some place like Vietnam, for example, Southeast Asia, let's say they land in Ho Chi Minh City in Saigon, and first thing happens is all these taxi drivers are like, hey, taxi, you go on a taxi, and then they get out, and then the taxi driver like says, oh, it's something crazy, 500,000 dong or whatever, and the guy's like, well, I thought I told you to use the meter, oh, no. And, this kind of scam, all the taxis trying to steal your money, rip you off. Man, to an American, that is just, it just pisses them off. As in, they're so angry, they're going to fight, they're ready to fight that person, ready to punch that man in the face. That's how a lot of Americans react violently to people who are trying to, give them prices that are way too high, or trying to steal their money or scam them. When they find out, a lot of them are just very naive. They don't know. And then they, but if they find out or they figure it out or that it's happening, why are you harassing me? Why are you trying to steal my money? What's wrong with you? And in America where I grew up, and still today, if you shake someone's hand, you say that you're going to do something, you better do it. You can't just make an excuse and not do it. Your word is, your oath. Now, unfortunately, I don't think this is an American value for most people anymore. Americans, man, there's so many Americans who sue each other. In other words, they take each other to court over small things and small problems, over any amount of little money, and I don't know. A lot of them are just trying to get money. So I think there are as many scammers, liars, cheaters, and dishonest people in America as in, most places of the world these days. Unfortunately, there used to not be, but I believe there are. And so I think actually the people probably overall in Vietnam now are, probably percentage-wise, there are more, I don't know, probably more honest people in Vietnam than America. I don't know. Okay, but honesty is certainly a traditional American value. Some values that are not traditional American values that you might be surprised and is different from your society. Education and higher education was never, until my generation, was never a traditional American value. Most parents wanted their children to be successful, to have a good job, to learn skills. Going to university was not considered, normal or important unless you had money to do it. You certainly did not have to go to university to get good jobs. My generation was the first generation where people started to think they had to go to university. And now young people, a lot of people the last two generations think they have to go to university. It hasn't worked well for America because there are a lot of people with university degrees but without many skills, especially skills that the job market needs or wants. So, okay, and education. And a lot of parents never bothered. Like when I was growing up, they made sure you did your homework, but they weren't like a lot of Vietnamese parents where they expected you to get all A's on your report card and they pushed you to learn more and more. I don't know. I'll tell you what was more important than education in a lot of high schools still today, and also in universities, is sports programs. So people love sports. They love American football. They love basketball. They love, sports are big and they're important. And they're actually, I think, still more important than education, unfortunately. But that's the reality. And also outdoor activities. Americans love outdoor activities. So going outdoors, going hiking, and I don't mean like, sometimes when I hear people say they're doing, hiking here, and they're going somewhere where there's all these people and everyone follows the same path, and I mean like going to the middle of, climbing a mountain yourself, or going out in nowhere, there's very few people, camping, with building a fire, living in a tent, these are things Americans love, fishing, hunting. Okay, so these are traditional American values. Being wealthy or rich is not really a traditional American value, I'd say. When I ask the question about what do you think is an ideal job for a career or lifelong later in life, to my Reading 2 class recently, almost everyone said a job earning a lot of money. And to American, that's just a weird answer. Like, wouldn't you rather do something that you enjoy eventually? I mean, if you really like teaching, go into teaching. But don't do it because you think you're going to make money. People, Americans, you ask them what they want to be. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a detective. I want to be a baseball player. I want to be, they have all kinds of wacky ideas. Most of them never do it or make it. But the point is, I guess they're dreamers. They believe that, careers, I mean, ideally it should be something you like. It doesn't happen for most people, but they don't try to just get a job where they make lots of money. Some do, a few, but not majority. Okay. Another thing that might surprise you, giving to family. Southeast Asians, a lot of societies, if you have someone who's making a lot of money in the family, maybe they're expected to share that money with the rest of the family. That's not an American value. My generation, our parents pretty much kicked us out of the house at age 18. Or maybe if you're going to university locally, you can stay, till you're 22, going to university. But by 23 or 24, you better be working full time. You better be out of the house. I consider still today a leech. A leech is someone who's, like it's an insect that sucks blood from your body. I consider like a lot of young Americans in their late 20s and 30s today even are like, they're living with their parents, or they're eating their parents' food for free. They're using their parents' car. They're like, spending their parents' money, and they're only working like not even 40 hours a week. I mean, to me, they're leeches. I hate these people. So it's because of the hard work, but it's also because you shouldn't be expected to, my parents would help me with university. People did not expect families to pay for your children's university. Now, again, this has changed a lot in the last 20 years, so maybe it's not such a value anymore, but if someone is sick or there's an emergency, give them money. My parents were happy to loan me some money occasionally, where I was expected to pay it back, and I did. Sometimes I didn't, but it wasn't that much money, and they kind of knew. So parents are happy to help children out, but they don't expect that they're going to just be giving them money, for little things all the time. And conversely, children who make a lot of money aren't expected to share it with their brothers or sisters or parents. If you work hard to get that money, that's yours. Now, if somebody has an emergency, give them money, but otherwise, no. This creates a lot of, tension sometimes when Americans marry somebody from a country like the Philippines or, I don't know about Vietnam so much, but where they like to share their money with their relatives, and it's just like, it drives Americans crazy. Okay. You might consider us stingy or that, but that's another American value that's a little bit different probably than yours. Is there anything I missed? I think that's about it. All right. Hope you enjoyed this on American values. See you in class.